The Dharma, which is life, is, in case you hadn't noticed, inexplicable, a mystery, ungraspable. And of course, we're trying all the time to grasp it and control it and pin it down, and then being disappointed or frustrated because it didn't cooperate with our agenda. It's so beautiful that we have ancient teachings to keep coming back to over and over, because they'll always set us straight. They will always push us off some edge of just when we thought we had it. It will introduce something subtle or ordinary or wondrous that will open us up over and over again. The wonder of the world and the suffering of the world, and the wonder of being a human being and the suffering of being a human being. Next week, we'll pick up the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh. I remember Norman Fisher saying that his experience was that different teachers pick up different pieces of the Dharma, different parts of the Dharma. It's like whatever your karma is, of course, you'll go in a certain gateway. And so Thich Nhat Hanh brings us Thich Nhat Hanh Dharma. It came out of the war, it came out of his heritage as someone born and lived and suffered and loved in Vietnam and then came to the West, and he has his own way of expressing himself. I think being human beings, what we want to do is we want to find somebody. Well, it's important to find someone who speaks to us, that has some resonance. But I think it's harder to realize that every teacher is lifting up the Dharma in a different way. And there is something beautiful about listening to different voices, studying the ancient teachers, listening to Thich Nhat Hanh, Suzuki Roshi. His heritage Japanese and bringing it to this country. And Zenju Manuel Earthlyn as a person of color who was born in the South in Louisiana in a time of that continues, but within her lifetime, she certainly knows the suffering of racism. So we're so lucky that we can listen and bring forward the teachings and be moved by their words and realize that each person is the finger pointing at the moon. It's like, look there. Oh, look there. It's why it was so sweet this last month at the Chusseaus. Shared the Dharma through the experience of their lives. And at different times in the Sangha, we've had different people give way-seeking mind talks. It's not so easy to explain anything, much less the ineffable. So I thought what I'd do tonight is Zenju's little book, The Deepest Peace, Contemplations from a Season of Stillness. She said she wrote this entire book while she was flat on her back in bed. But I wanted to start with a quote from Suzuki Roshi, because I think they're both saying the same thing. They're just saying it in very different and not so different ways. So I thought I'd start with his quote and then we'd see what Zenju, how she articulates the Dharma. And then, as we always do, we'll go into small groups and you get to practice. How does this come through you? How does this touch you? Because otherwise, it's just some intellectual idea. And if there's any point to this, it's to live it and to find out how it is in your bones, in your heart, in your breath. So here's from Suzuki Roshi. True practice is established in delusion, in frustration. So if you feel deluded or frustrated, you are right on the mark. Good work. If you make some mistake, that is where you establish your practice. There is no other place for you to establish your practice. It's amazing how much we aren't generous with ourselves. Like if you would just be less deluded, less frustrated, and stop making mistakes, then you might really get the Dharma instead of realizing what incredibly beautiful mud, in Thich Nhat Hanh's words, and the Lotus Sutra, and we all have just what we need. We talk about enlightenment, but in its true sense, perfect enlightenment is beyond our understanding and beyond our experience. Even in our imperfect practice, enlightenment is there. Full and complete and perfect enlightenment, awakening is always here. It's not someplace else. It's like, you just don't know it. Wherever you are, enlightenment is right here. If you stand up right where you are, that is enlightenment. Just stand up right where you are. Feel your breath, feel your body, feel your uprightness. This is it. This is called I don't know Zazen. I don't know Zazen. You don't know what Zazen is anymore. I don't know who I am. To find complete composure when you don't know who you are or where you are, that is to accept things as it is. Even though you don't know who you are, you accept yourself. This is very profound teaching. And it's so simple. And we get to really study our delusion because we really, fundamentally, the self does not like this. It wants to know who it is, where it is, and what's going on, which is then just love the self. You just accept yourself. That's you in your true sense. When you know who you are, when you know who you are, that you will not be the real you. It will be some idea of you. You may overestimate yourself quite easily or underestimate yourself. But when you say, I don't know, not, I don't know. This I does not know. Here I am. Here I am. Then you are you, and you know yourself completely. That is enlightenment. Okay, now we're going to see how Zenju might say this. She says, many times I have testified to my suffering and written at length on race, gender, sexual orientation, and homelessness. Before I die, I must speak of peace. Life has not been all torment in this dark and mysterious body. And yet, torment and peace are not separate. They come together in a world that pulls you towards violence and bends you down to pray for peace. They come together in a world that pulls you towards violence and bends you down to pray for peace. This world is not aberrant. That thing that looks like violence out there, or this peace that we're yearning for. Peace is here all along. I like this next part because maybe it's just me, but I suspect I'm not the only one who spent a good part of my life ongoing in resistance. Resisting in one way or another. I have my own special way of doing it. It's hard to accept things as it is. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't resist in the sense of try to change it, but there's something fundamental about resisting life. She says, during years of chanting and meditation, Zenju is a Zen priest in our lineage, the habit of fighting against what was in front of me arose and dissolved like waves in an ocean. There were times when I asked questions, critiqued, and took action. And there were times when confusion took over. The mind doubled down on itself. Do you know how that feels when the mind doubles down on itself? And be willing to taste it. The only thing to do during those times was to breathe and to be still. Oh, dear mind, you're doubling down on yourself. The body knows when to stop and breathe and just be still in the midst of it. Stillness is inherent. After suffering and resistance, the only thing left is contemplation of life. What is it? And after contemplation, stillness, and after stillness, peace. We have this beautiful tradition of Zazen. We just sit still in the midst of it all. And we help each other. Zenju says, Zen is a sitting ceremony. Isn't that beautiful? It's just a ceremony of sitting. We know we are to bring ourselves, but we still ask, is there anything else I must bring? Surely this couldn't be it. Nothing. What must I do? Nothing but be alive. That's all. There's nothing special here. And it's the most beautiful thing in the whole world. Our bravery as we join in this ceremony, it does take courage to stop and sit down and be willing to feel. When the mind doubles down on itself, let's distract, let's run. Let's beat up on ourselves or somebody else, but just to stop and breathe. Our bravery as we join this ceremony, this searching for peace, inevitably, meaning you can't escape, leads to both heart-wrenching and heart-opening. Both. Heart-wrenching and heart-opening. Is it possible to return from the grace, terror, sorrow, and beauty of sitting with nothing? If we let it, the silence shakes us. Still, we accept the invitation to sit because we are daredevils. You didn't know what a daredevil you were coming to this simple Sangha, this simple ritual of Zen. We're willing to die in the silence in order to live. We are thrilled by the possibilities and dangers of silence. Can you hear it and feel it right now? It moves, it removes our armor and shields so that the earth can get closer and whisper in our ears. Deep silence leaves everything out, all of what you know and think you are. Zen means nothing in itself. We bring pride and ego, ideas, hopes, and desires to not suffer any longer. Thank goodness this human life can never be completely known. You are not getting it, and you are not getting it right. This is exactly it. Who is it that crawls through windows? It's the morning dawn. She parts the sea of darkness so that the center of light within it is revealed. There's no need to go after the light. Stay in the darkness. Learn how to be in it without suffering. These are really specific instructions. In the old Zen texts, they would say, "Oh, she's being too she's giving away the store, telling us too many things." Just sit down in the silence. Be a daredevil. Learn how to be in the darkness without suffering in it. We are to be undone. We are to be undone. This is life. There's no getting around it. We unravel over and over again. Life gets disrupted. We are thrown off. We face the unimaginable. It's sobering, ending up in a place that we thought we'd never be. In that strange place, we are quietly undone. We are right now in a time, it's always happening, but it does seem we are in a time where things are quietly being undone by the pandemic and all of the things that are spinning, and to sit in the darkness. Be willing with and for all beings to be undone. We're not who we thought we were. We burn away, and then immediately we want to sweep up the ashes or whittle and sand the charred pieces to make a smooth mound of life. A mound that, if breathed upon, would come undone again. What are we to do when we feel lost? A stranger in our own lives. We go through it. In the undoing of life, silence stretches into eternity revealing stars in the dark. We cry at the destruction of a way of living caused by the sudden death of a loved one, the loss of a home, the arrival of life-threatening illness. At the time of undoing, our gathered breath stored in the belly for emergencies is meant to be breathed out and heard in the wild like a bird's song, like a bison's call. At the time of undoing, our cries ascended from ancestors are to be discharged into the world, out into the atmosphere of a million realms. In disruption, we feel our feet deeper and listen for what is beneath the earth. We hone radiance for what it reveals, what is being said about centuries of violence, what's being asked of us in the midst of injustice. Is the death of our loved ones the beginning of a living together in a different way, while preparing us for our own leaving? To be undone is to be reminded that in nothingness there is peace. A peace-filled nothingness isn't an annihilation of anything or anyone. It's a nothingness that feels like a blanket of snow that covers for a time what you have taken for granted and rarely appreciate. The beauty of peaceful nothingness is that everything is here. We are born. Along the way, we discover that our sacred work is to share life among all beings. That's what we're here to wake up to. To be undone and undone and undone, so that we can more and more know that we are here to share this life among all beings. We need energy to do this, and without energy, awakening is not possible. Peace is not possible. Without an exchange of life force between us, we remain clueless and allow fear of each other to destroy us. You can't do this by yourself. We're always in relationship, being undone by love. That's why we sit, to find the ground and the strength just to be here, fully to be here, and to blossom into compassion. Compassion is not to affirm our suffering or love, but to be awakened to the fact that we share this life. Compassion is not in the realm of behavior. It's not kindness or niceness. It's not some idea. You can't figure this out. It's in the living of it. It's not pity, sympathy, mercy, empathy, or charity, because those things require that we look upon another as not ourselves. In feeling into my animal self, compassion is an experience of life that rises in the midst of our suffering. Compassion is a presence and experience that arises when one feels an acceptance. When you feel an acceptance of the vulnerable, suffering human being that you are, you can't go around this, and there is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing that you're not giving or getting. Compassion is not a thing to accomplish, wrapped as a present, given as a gift, or practiced. It can only boil up in the deepest pain until it spills into the laps of those who surround you. This is the experience of peace in a circle of humanity that lives together rather than in one group exploiting another. Wow. Zenju has her own direct way of expressing the Dharma that has come out of her own suffering and her own life and her own vow to not turn away, to be undone and undone and undone. Suzuki Roshi calls it, I don't know Zazen. I don't know what you call it. To find complete composure when you don't know who you are or where you are. That is to accept things as it is. They're saying the exact same thing. Okay, bodhisattvas. Here's a question